that chilling effect could have been exerted very powerfully had it not been for people like myself and more prominent people like J.K. Rowling testing the law by making sure that we continue to speak freely and to challenge this regressive, illiberal legislation.
You're so right. I've been following J.K. Rowling. By the way, she causes reverberations even here in Canada. But in the west coast city of Vancouver, on the Pacific side of our country, a young nurse put up a billboard that just says, "I heart J.K. Rowling." And she's been prosecuted ever since for conduct unbecoming. So J.K. Rowling is a fascinating person with such a huge platform, and she exerts herself for freedom. I saw the other day, she tweeted that if anyone gets in trouble for, say, misgendering someone, because I think you're right, this is about one of the things they're going to do if they're not protecting sex, but they're protecting gender identity. Seems pretty clear to me this is a transgender censorship act. J.K. Rowling said she will re-utter whatever someone who is charged with a hate speech says. She's basically saying, come and get me, pick on someone your own size, and she's got an enormous size in terms of reputation, a following, and of course money. She won't be as easily picked on as an ordinary person.
No, I think what she's done is incredibly courageous and really important, because she's really called out the chilling effect, and she's made it quite clear that she will stand with anyone who is targeted by the gender ideology mob. And, this is, queer theory, or I call them queer theory extremists, because they are one strand of the critical social justice movement, which is an inversion of everything that they purport to stand for. So I think it's incredibly important that people like J.K. Rowling row in behind ordinary citizens. And I certainly have made it absolutely clear that I will not be silenced. I will not be stopped speaking up about child safeguarding, speaking up about women's rights, and the protection of LGBT people's sex-based rights, which have also been brought into this so-called LGBTQI, etc. movement, without any thought or consideration of whether we want to participate in this nonsense or not.
Isn't that interesting? Because, of course, you, as an elected member of Parliament, have parliamentary privilege. And what does that mean? One of the things it means is that your speech is protected. It's protected absolutely when you are in the chamber of the House of Commons. That's something that we inherited from you here in Canada. But there's also an argument to be made that what you do in the service of your constituents as an MP, when you make comments on Twitter or outside the chamber, there's an argument that that would have privilege as well. This seems to me to be an attack, not just on ordinary people, but if you yourself have been targeted and if police followed up with a bizarre communication, I wonder if you have ever given consideration to filing to making a point of privilege, a privilege complaint to the Speaker of the House of Commons. That strikes me as you would be one of a small number of people who would be able to do that because you are, an MP.
Well, I mean, we do have parliamentary privilege, but parliamentary privilege is not an absolute right to say whatever you want.
Of course,
you still have to behave within the rules of Parliament, and and outside the chamber, you're not covered by some of the protections of privilege. So you do have to be careful about what you say. But the basic position that I've taken is that I will continue to tell the truth. I will continue to speak clearly about my political views, my lawfully held political views about some of the thorny issues that we're dealing with. I will continue to stand up for young people who are being subjected to the most horrific medical and surgical interventions without any proper care or consideration of their rights, and they're accelerated onto these fast-track paths into transgender clinics. I feel that that's my absolute responsibility to speak loudly and clearly about this. And if the police and the government deem that unlawful and they want to arrest me, then they can do that. But that will open a Pandora's box because, certainly in the last week, we've started a petition. The Alba Party, my party, have started a petition to repeal the Hate Crime Act. And so far, 68% of the Scottish population agree with us. So these laws are not popular. I'm sure you've experienced this much more profoundly in Canada. You've been on quite a torturous journey under Justin Trudeau over the last few years, and and I stand in solidarity with Chris Enston. I met Billboard Chris personally. I had a good chat with him last year, but many campaigners who are standing against this illiberal movement, which seems to have afflicted governments across the world. And we really must stand united to defeat this illiberal movement.
Well, that's very interesting to me that you've been following what's going on in Canada, and we know Billboard Chris well because he's the pointy edge of the spear on that issue. Unfortunately, you're ahead of us in terms of legislation. Justin Trudeau's proposed censorship bill is only just introduced in Parliament a few months ago. Let me ask you one question about going back a bit to the 8,000 or so complaints that were filed right away.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the man who proposed this bill, the First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, had the most complaints against him. I'm not surprised. But here's my question to you. Who judges whether or not a complaint will get the non-hate crime incident marking, or if it'll be kicked up a notch and actually be investigated and prosecuted by police? Is that a police decision? Is there some hate finder general? Is there some panel of activists? In Canada, different hate crimes have a different answer for that. There's something called the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, etc. If they were to proceed against you, who would make that decision? And I guess my follow-up question is, does that mean if Humza Yousaf appoints the hate finders that they'll never accept a complaint against him? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this process works, or maybe it's still a bit of a mystery.
Well, it absolutely is a mystery. I mean, that's one of the issues about the precision or lack of the legislation is it doesn't even mention non-crime hate incidents. This is a matter of mystery. And it seems to rest in the hands of whoever the police officer is that is investigating your specific complaint. And what's interesting about non-crime hate incidents and how they will or will not be recorded is that the minister responsible for the legislation, Siobhan Brown, who has done the rounds of the various different media channels in the UK since the bill was introduced, is unable to clarify any of this detail. And there are no explanatory notes that set out how this would be recorded and what the threshold is to trigger a non-crime hate incident. So none of that is clear. But what has become clear is that the First Minister has stated in the media that neither he nor J.K. Rowling will have a non-crime hate incident recorded against their name. Now, that is simply a question of equity. So if you're a First Minister or the most famous author in the world and you don't have a non-crime hate incident marked against your name, then why is a member of the Scottish Parliament able to have one put against his name, or indeed any other person in the country, without being informed or, more importantly, being able to defend themselves? What happened to the right to a fair trial?